In 1975, a 19-year-old girl vanished on her way home. Her car was found abandoned by a river, the keys still in the ignition. With no body and no signs of a struggle, police closed the case, calling it a voluntary disappearance. For 48 years, her mother waited, and a killer hid in plain sight. This is the story of how a single piece of evidence, forgotten in a dusty box for half a century, finally revealed a shocking secret and brought justice for Sarah Chen. But before we begin our journey into this haunting mystery, let us know where you're watching from in the comments below. And if you're fascinated by cases solved after decades, make sure to hit that subscribe button and click the notification bell so you won't miss any of our deep dives into America's most compelling cold cases. Bakersfield, California, March 1975. The evening air carries a slight chill as winter reluctantly gives way to spring. On a quiet street just beyond the downtown area, the lights of small businesses begin to flicker off, one by one, as another day draws to a close. Sarah Chen finishes her shift at Stitch Perfect, a small tailor shop where she's worked for the past 2 years. At 19, she's saving money for community college, dreaming of becoming a teacher. She carefully folds her apron, places it in her cloth bag, and says goodnight to her manager, Mrs. Delaney. Sarah walks to the parking lot where her light blue Ford Pinto waits under a flickering streetlight. The engine turns over with a soft rumble, and she begins her usual drive home to the suburbs. At a local gas station, an attendant named Carlos Mendez will later recall her stopping for an orange soda. She smiles, mentioning she's heading home for dinner with her mother. The Pinto pulls back onto the road, its tail lights fading into the deepening twilight along Highway 99. It's the last time anyone will report seeing Sarah Chen alive. As night deepens, the lights burn bright in the Chen household. Dinner grows cold on the table. Maria Chen stares at the clock on the wall, its hands now frozen at 9:14. The mechanism stopped hours earlier, though she doesn't know it yet. She steps onto the porch, calling her daughter's name into the darkness, hearing only the distant hum of traffic from the highway. By morning, Sarah's bed remains untouched, her shoes still neatly arranged beneath her dresser. Maria picks up the telephone and dials the Kern County Sheriff's Department, her voice catching between uneven breaths. "My daughter didn't come home last night," she tells the overnight dispatcher. "I'm afraid something's happened." That call, logged at 5:47 a.m., marks the beginning of a disappearance that would haunt Bakersfield for nearly half a century. To understand Sarah's story in context, we need to understand the broader picture of missing persons in America. The landscape of missing persons cases varies dramatically from state to state. While California has the highest number of missing persons in absolute terms, its rate is average when population is considered. States like Rhode Island have as few as 29 missing persons cases, while others like Florida have among the highest numbers of resolved cases in the country. As of January 2025, Florida had the highest number of resolved missing persons cases in the United States. Meanwhile, California had the most open missing persons cases throughout the country. These statistics reflect different approaches to investigating missing persons, population sizes, and resource allocation across states. But behind every statistic, every data point on these charts, there's a human story. A life interrupted, a family forever changed. Sarah Chen became one of these statistics on that March evening in 1975. But her story was far from over. As the first light of dawn breaks through the gray morning haze, Sheriff Daniel Carter leaves his home, coffee still hot in his thermos, as he drives to the Chen residence. The small house, at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac, sits silently, its front door slightly ajar. Maria Chen waits in the living room, a photograph of her daughter on the coffee table before her. She's beyond tears now, looking up as Carter enters, her voice rough with strain. "She never would have left without telling me." Carter nods, his weary eyes, seasoned by 20 years on the job, betraying a trace of sympathy. He asks detailed questions about Sarah's routines, her car, her friends, then borrows her high school graduation photo. The picture shows a young woman with straight black hair, smiling brightly, holding a small bouquet of carnations. Carter tucks the photo into his jacket pocket, promising to do everything possible. By mid-morning, Carter has assembled a response team of 7 officers, 3 firefighters, and several community volunteers. A map sprawls across his desk, colored pins marking key locations: the gas station, Sarah's workplace, Highway 99, and the Kern River crossing. "Start the search routes at these points," Carter instructs, his voice low and steady. But everyone in the room senses the tension beneath his calm demeanor. The first team leaves the station at 8:30 a.m., sirens cutting through the morning air. They'll comb the routes between Sarah's workplace and her home, checking ditches, empty lots, and roadside businesses. Sheriff Carter drives the department's older Chevrolet with Deputy Lisa Morales, stopping at stores along the route to ask questions. A convenience store clerk hasn't seen anyone matching Sarah's description, but the gas station attendant Carlos confirms her stop the previous evening. "She bought an orange soda," he recalls, "said she was heading home for dinner." Then he adds a detail that will haunt the investigation for decades. "There was a man standing near her car in the lot, tall, wearing a plaid shirt. I didn't hear them talk, just saw her nod slightly. Then they both drove off toward the river." By noon, search teams expand their perimeter around the Kern River area. Dogs are brought to the riverbank, boats launch into the water, and men comb through every patch of brush and rocky outcrop. Sheriff Carter stands on a bluff overlooking the river, his hand tight around a cigarette, eyes fixed on the muddy water flowing silently below. He feels in his bones that this is no ordinary missing persons case. What was happening in Bakersfield in 1975 was repeating itself in communities across America. The technology for finding missing persons was primitive by today's standards. No DNA analysis, no national databases, no Amber Alerts. The National Missing and Unidentified Persons System, NamUs, wouldn't be created for decades. In the 1970s, missing persons investigations relied on local knowledge, shoe leather, and sometimes pure luck. Communication between jurisdictions was poor, with no efficient way to share information about missing persons across state lines. This lack of coordination meant that many cases went cold quickly, with families left without answers, often blaming themselves for their inability to find their loved ones. Back in Bakersfield, as the sun sets on the first day of the search, Maria Chen sits by her window, staring at the empty street. Somewhere out there, her daughter is missing, and with each passing hour, the trail grows colder. She doesn't know it yet, but she's beginning a wait that will last 48 years. On the second morning of the search, a thick tulle fog blankets the Kern River area, reducing visibility to near zero. The murky river water moves sluggishly, the air heavy with the scent of damp earth and diesel from nearby farms. The search team departs early from their makeshift command post. Pickup trucks carrying men and dogs winding slowly along the dirt access roads. Sheriff Daniel Carter sits in the passenger seat, clutching a wrinkled map marked with red circles. He stares silently through the fogged window, the shadows under his eyes betraying 2 sleepless nights. At approximately 7:40 a.m., a firefighter leading the group signals for the convoy to stop. At a bend in the road about a quarter-mile from the Kern River bridge, something glints dully beneath the low-hanging trees. Carter steps out, mud clinging to his boots, his eyes following the faint reflection of pale blue metal through the mist. As they approach, a familiar shape emerges from the fog. Sarah Chen's Ford Pinto sits parked at an angle off the road, its rear wheels sunk into the soft soil. The driver's door stands slightly ajar, the window half down, keys still in the ignition. There's no engine sound, no signs of activity. Just an eerie silence, as if the car has been there for centuries. Carter signals the officers to secure the area. He approaches slowly, peering through the window. On the passenger seat rests Sarah's floral print cloth bag, open, containing her wallet with $13 intact, some loose change, a small notebook, and an unopened can of orange soda. The driver's seat is pushed back, the steering wheel slightly tilted, as if someone taller than Sarah had been sitting there. Carter touches the hood, stone cold. He opens the door and the smell of gasoline and damp upholstery wafts out. There's no blood, no signs of a struggle, just a thin layer of dust on the gear shift and mud caked on the floor mats. Typical for this area, Deputy Morales notes, scanning the surroundings where a few crows perch on nearby power lines. Carter doesn't respond, moving instead to the rear of the car. Footprints mingle in the mud. Hard to identify, but he notes at least 2 distinct types. One small, possibly female, and another larger, clearly male. He signals for photographs. The youngest officer, Tim Reynolds, pulls out a Polaroid camera, snapping several shots. The images develop slowly, the chemicals creating ghostly representations of the scene. No signs of a struggle, no blood. Her purse still here, Morales mutters. What do you think? Carter sighs, flicking cigarette ash to the ground. Maybe she left with someone voluntarily or was lured away. His voice is soft, tinged with doubt. To understand what happens next, we need to consider the state of forensic science in 1975. This was before DNA analysis existed as a forensic tool. The technique wouldn't be discovered for another decade, and it would take even longer to become a standard tool in criminal investigations. In 1975, police relied on fingerprints, blood typing, and hair analysis, all useful but limited compared to today's technologies. The first use of DNA in a criminal case wouldn't occur until 1986 in England, and the United States wouldn't see its first DNA conviction until 1987. For Sheriff Carter and his team in 1975, the forensic tools available were primitive at best. They could determine blood type from evidence, match fingerprints if they had good samples and a suspect to compare them to, and analyze hair under a microscope. But none of these methods offered the certainty of DNA matching. Back at the Kern River, the team spends nearly an hour combing the area. They find a tissue caught in a bush, some rusted beer cans, and tire tracks that overlap with older marks, possibly from a truck or sedan, but it's impossible to be certain. The search dogs follow a scent along the riverbank but lose it where the current quickens. As the sun climbs higher, the heat becomes oppressive, and Carter calls off the morning search. He orders the car towed to the station for further inspection. On the drive back, Carter studies the Polaroid of the Pinto, angled on the grassy shoulder, his eyes fixed on the image. "Don't let anyone near the scene until I return," he tells Morales. In the garage behind the Kern County station, the blue Ford Pinto sits under a stained tarp, its wheels still caked with river mud. The smell of gasoline, damp earth, and metal hangs heavy in the air. Carter leans against the wall, holding a cold cup of coffee, staring at the car, as if willing it to speak. 3 days have passed since Sarah's disappearance, and there's still no trace of the young woman. 2 department technicians begin the examination. They have no modern forensic lab, just a Polaroid camera, some plastic evidence bags, and a spiral notebook. "Photograph every angle," Carter instructs. Tim nods, snapping shots that emerge blurry, streaked with sunlight and shadow. They open the back door and discover a large footprint on the floor mat. Deep, with thick horizontal treads, rounded toe, size approximately 10. "Not a woman's shoe," Tim notes, leaning closer. Morales glances over, jotting quickly in the notebook. "Footprint, male, size approximately 10. No one has brought a ruler or scale markers for proper documentation. Carter stares at the footprint for a long time, his shirt damp with sweat. "Take a mud sample. Send it to the state lab," he says. Morales shakes his head. "Sir, we don't have proper sample tubes, and this month's evidence transport budget is gone." Carter falls silent, crushing his cigarette, gaze fixed. In 1970s California, local police departments often lacked funding for cases without a confirmed crime. "Then just document it," he says finally. A quiet order that would later represent the first crack in the investigation. On the 4th day after the car's discovery, Carter begins the first round of formal interviews. He sits in a small room at the Kern County station, its walls stained with watermarks, a ceiling fan creaking overhead. On the desk lie Polaroids of the blue Ford Pinto, witness statements, and a list scribbled in pencil. The first person to be interviewed is Carlos Mendez, the night shift worker at the gas station, the last person to see Sarah Chen. He's young, his hair slick with product, his shirt carrying the smell of motor oil. Carter observes his demeanor carefully as he revisits the details from his initial statement. "When did she stop by?" "Around 10 to 8, sir, alone. But when she stepped out, there was a man standing near the payphone. I thought they knew each other." Carter leans forward. "Did you get a good look at his face?" Carlos shakes his head, lips slightly pursed. "I just remember he was tall, dark hair, wearing a plaid shirt with what looked like paint stains on the sleeve. I didn't think much of it. When I went outside to check the pumps, they were both gone." Before Carlos leaves, Carter asks one more question. "Did you hear them say anything?" "No, sir. Just saw her give a small smile, like she was reassuring someone." That afternoon, Carter and Morales visit Stitch Perfect, the tailor shop where Sarah worked. The shop hums with the sound of sewing machines, the scent of fabric and thread filling the air. The manager, Helen Delaney, recalls Sarah leaving around 7:40 p.m., carrying her cloth bag and wearing a light jacket. She said she'd be home early for dinner with her mom, Helen remembers. She even smiled, told me to save her a piece of coffee cake for the next day. That evening, Carter interviews Sarah's ex-boyfriend, Michael Roberts, a 21-year-old student at Bakersfield College. Michael arrives at the station looking exhausted, face pale, hands tightly clasped. When questioned, he says, "We broke up 3 months ago. No fights, no hard feelings. I don't know anything about this, sir." Carter asks where he was that night. "I was at the library studying. The librarian can confirm I was there until at least 10. A later check verifies Michael's alibi. In the days that follow, one name begins to surface repeatedly in the investigation: Pastor David Miller, who had spoken with Sarah at the First Community Church the week before her disappearance. A friend from the choir mentions that Pastor Miller often showed special attention to Sarah, praising her singing and devoted spirit. Others recall him driving past the tailor shop occasionally, claiming he was just checking in on parishioners. When Morales brings this information to Carter, he looks up, silent for a long moment. He's heard that name before. The same man who joined the initial search team and reportedly found a scarf monogrammed with SC near the river. That afternoon, Carter asks Pastor Miller to come to the station. He arrives promptly, wearing a crisp white shirt, collar buttoned neatly, salt and pepper hair combed smoothly back. As he enters, he offers a faint smile, his eyes calm. "Pastor," Carter begins, "we just need to clarify a few details. You spoke with Miss Chen recently, correct?" Miller nods, his voice low and measured. "Yes, she was a lovely young woman. Often helped with Sunday school. I saw her almost as a daughter." Carter watches his every movement, every blink, every slight gesture of his hands on the table. "Did you see her the night of the incident?" Miller shakes his head. "No, I was at home preparing my sermon. When I heard she was missing, I joined the search. I just wanted to help." Carter slides a Polaroid of the search team across the table. "That's you, right?" Miller looks at it, smiling. "Yes, I remember that day. I'm the one who found the scarf. So tragic." "Where did you say you found it?" "Right at the river's edge, near where the car was discovered." Carter nods, taking notes, but something troubles him: the timing of Miller's presence. Reports indicate Miller arrived at least 30 minutes before the police. Yet no one has asked why. 3 weeks after the final interview, the Chen case has stalled. No new witnesses, no solid evidence. Each time Carter submits a preliminary report to the county office, he receives a terse reply: "No new leads. Continue monitoring." Day after day, he rereads the witness statements, searching for a discrepancy, a small detail that might spark a new direction. But everything leads to dead ends. Outside, Bakersfield moves on as if nothing has happened. Stitch Perfect continues business as usual. The gas station remains open each night, and First Community Church rings its bells every Sunday. Only one mother sits by her window, staring at the empty street where her daughter's car should be parked. Carter begins to feel pressure from his superiors. Kern County has a limited budget, and a disappearance without evidence of a crime is never a priority. At the weekly briefing, the administrative captain sets the Chen file on the table, his voice flat. 3 weeks, no body, no signs of crime. Don't let this consume all our resources. Carter doesn't respond. He stares out the window at the early spring blossoms, then signs the final report. No foul play suspected. The next day, the case is officially filed as a missing persons case. Deputy Morales asks quietly. Are we really closing it? Carter doesn't look up. We've got nothing to hold on to. No evidence, no crime, no budget. You know how it works. He says it calmly, but his eyes remain fixed on the Polaroid of the monogram scarf as if he doesn't believe his own words. That afternoon, Carter personally takes the evidence to the storage room behind the station. The small space, lit by a single yellow bulb, smells of old paper and rusted metal. He places the 3 remaining pieces of evidence in a cardboard box. The scarf wrapped sloppily in plastic, 6 blurry Polaroids, and an 11-page handwritten report. He writes in red pen on the label, 75 Chen, missing person. As he seals the box with tape, he pauses, staring at the words he's just written. The red ink seems to blur slightly, as if resisting being placed among the dust-covered cases resting silently here. He places the box on the 3rd shelf from the left, among others. 73 Martinez, 74 Johnson, 75 Chen, 76 Thompson. He brushes dust from the label, then locks the storage door. The iron bolt clangs sharply, echoing in the empty hallway. That night, Carter sits alone in his office, the door ajar, listening to the rain outside. The Chen file lies neatly on his desk, not yet stored away. His mind keeps returning to Pastor Miller, his soft voice, his unsettlingly calm eyes. He recalls a small detail from Miller's statement about finding the scarf. I saw it at the water's edge, almost as if it had been placed there to be found. That sentence keeps Carter awake all night. But despite his instincts telling him something is wrong, he can do nothing more. No evidence, no basis for a search warrant. And in the eyes of the county administration, the case is simply a young woman who left home for her own reasons. In the years that follow, Sarah Chen's name fades from Bakersfield's collective memory like a wisp of smoke. After the case is closed, few ask questions. In 1976, the Bakersfield Californian runs a brief note. Chen disappearance, no new developments. A week later, it's replaced by a story about a new shopping mall development. In the county evidence storage room, the 75 Chen box sits silently on its metal shelf beside older files, gathering dust with each passing year. New deputies occasionally notice the faded label, "Who's Chen?" and receive no answer. Carter transfers to a regional office in 1978. Deputy Morales moves to Traffic Division. The room where Carter signed "No foul play suspected" now contains only yellowed walls and the musty odor of forgotten paper. Around 1979, Maria Chen sells the family home, moving to Sacramento to live with relatives. People say she took her daughter's Ford Pinto, keeping it under a tarp in a storage unit. The car never starts again. By 1983, the county seizes abandoned property, and the Pinto is scrapped with dozens of other vehicles. The transfer record notes briefly, item Jacker N583, vehicle, blue Pinto, scrapped. The 1980s pass, and investigative technology remains stagnant in Kern County. No DNA testing, no national databases, no computerized case management. Police still rely on instincts and blurry Polaroids, pencil descriptions that fade easily. During a heavy rainstorm that floods the storage room in 1987, dozens of case files are ruined, papers clumping into soggy masses. Workers cleaning up discard most of the damaged files but keep a few intact boxes, among them 75 Chen. Its tape remains sealed, the red ink faded to brown. No one opens it, perhaps out of respect, or perhaps because no one remembers what it contains. By the late 1990s, America enters a new era of forensic science. DNA analysis becomes more common. though still not routinely applied to cold cases. The National Missing and Unidentified Persons System, NamUs, is still years away from creation. In Bakersfield, the evidence room remains a time capsule of forgotten investigations. The 75 Chen box, though intact, is moved to the lowest shelf, reserved for non-criminal cases. No one objects, and no one checks its contents. The box sits there, thick with dust, its label faint but intact, a silent testament to a mystery buried by time. When the storage room lights go out, the space sinks into silence, broken only by the hum of an aging air conditioner, like the tired breath of a sleeping justice system. The turn of the 21st century brought a revolution in forensic science that would transform cold case investigations across America. Techniques that were science fiction in 1975 became standard tools for law enforcement. At the heart of this revolution was DNA analysis, which had evolved from a theoretical concept to a powerful forensic tool capable of solving decades-old mysteries. According to forensic experts, since its discovery in 1985 by Alec Jeffreys, forensic DNA profiling has emerged as an immensely powerful technology. The development of genetic approaches to forensic human identification would eventually revolutionize missing persons investigations, homicide cases, and human rights investigations alike. Private laboratories like Othram began specializing in forensic genetic genealogy, enabling investigators to break through previously impenetrable forensic DNA barriers. As one facility describes it, their technology enables the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System, NamUs, to identify human remains and resolve missing persons cases. These advances meant that evidence once considered too degraded or insufficient for analysis could now yield crucial clues. March 2023. After nearly half a century in the basement of the Kern County Sheriff's Office, the 75 Chen box is reopened. The storage room has changed. New metal shelving, bright LED lighting, QR code management systems. But the smell of old paper and concrete remains much the same as in 1975. Standing in the room that morning is Detective Alex Rivera, a 45-year-old investigator with the California Cold Case Unit, a new state initiative to revisit unsolved disappearances. Lean and methodical, Rivera has a habit of wearing nitrile gloves when handling old files, a practice born from both respect for evidence and awareness of its fragility. When the list of cold cases arrives from various counties, Rivera selects a name almost no one remembers: Chen. Sarah. He finds the box in the bottom corner of the fourth shelf. Its label so faded he needs his flashlight to read it. He carefully places it on a stainless steel table, peeling back the brittle tape with the care of an archaeologist opening an ancient tomb. Inside, besides yellowed handwritten reports, are 3 pieces of evidence: a folded white scarf, 6 blurry Polaroids, and a small plastic bag with a single strand of dark hair stuck to dried mud. On the bag's edge, a scribbled note in ballpoint pen. Found near vehicle, Kern River Bridge, March 1975. Rivera puts on magnifying headset, shining a light on the hair. It's thin, about 6 centimeters long, no visible root, but still intact. He exhales softly. "Still here," he murmurs. "Unbelievable." Sheriff Carter's original report remains in the file, its bold, slanted handwriting concluding, "No foul play suspected." Rivera rereads that line, lips pursed. No signs of a crime, he wonders. How could anyone conclude that when a 19-year-old vanishes with her car abandoned by a river, That afternoon, Rivera takes the evidence to the state's modern processing lab. Technician Jessica Lynn helps him examine it under a microscope. Real hair, not synthetic, she confirms, her voice tinged with excitement. We might be able to extract DNA if it hasn't degraded completely. Rivera nods. What about the scarf? Jessica opens the bag, spreading the yellowed white cloth on the examination table. One corner bears the embroidered initials SC in blue thread, the stitching meticulous but faded. She swabs it lightly, placing the sample in a tube. If there's epithelial cell residue, we might get a match. With luck, we'll find male DNA. Among the Polaroids is one showing the 1975 search team. 5 men standing by the Kern River, gray sky behind them. One tall figure in a white shirt stands half in shadow. Beneath the photo, a handwritten note. Volunteer, Pastor DM. Rivera jots a quick note, then scans the photo into the digital archive. The initials pique his curiosity. He opens his laptop, accessing Bakersfield's religious organization database, searching for pastors active between 1970 and 1980. A name appears within minutes. Pastor David Miller, First Community Church, retired 1990, died 2007. 3 weeks after sending the samples, Rivera's inbox pings softly in the quiet afternoon. He's in the records room beside the now empty at 75 Chen box when he sees the subject line. State Crime Lab, DNA results ready. His hand trembles slightly as he opens the attachment. The 3-page report's first lines make his heart pound. Biological sample from white scarf shows 2 DNA sources. Source 1, female. Source 2, male. Y chromosome DNA matches 99.9987% with reference sample in California State Database. Identity confirmed as David Miller, male, born 1946, resided in Bakersfield, California. Rivera leans back, silent. The room seems to shrink around him. That name, David Miller, the same one written under the Polaroid, the pastor of First Community Church, the volunteer in the search, the man whom Deputy Morales had noted, something's off in his eyes. Now his DNA is on the missing girl's scarf. He rereads the lab's conclusion, his heart tightening with each pass. At the end of page 3, a verification note. Analysis performed via STR mix and MPS. Random match probability, 1 in 220 trillion. No room for doubt. That man had left his biological signature on the only remaining evidence. That afternoon, Rivera updates the Chen file. Reopened, active cold case investigation. Under suspect, he enters the first name in 48 years. Miller David, deceased. That night, he works late. Old reports spread across his desk, beside the 1975 Polaroid of Miller. Tall, broad-shouldered, face half-shadowed. He uses software to enlarge and enhance the image. Under artificial light, the face clarifies. Deep-set eyes, lips pressed tightly together. Gaze not at the camera but elsewhere. A look both calm and distant that sends a chill through Rivera. The next morning, he presents his preliminary findings to the California Cold Case Review Board. The closed-door meeting has 5 attendees. When Rivera displays the DNA results, the room falls silent. We're talking about a former pastor, one officer notes quietly. Rivera nods. Yes, he served at First Community Church from 1968 to 1988, then retired. Currently deceased. He pauses, taking a breath. His DNA is on evidence from the 1975 disappearance scene. That's not coincidence. What Rivera used represents one of the most powerful tools in modern cold case investigations: forensic genetic genealogy. This technique combines traditional DNA analysis with genealogical research to identify suspects or victims through their family connections. as described in forensic resources. Thanks to advances in forensic genealogy and other cutting-edge technologies, forgotten crimes can now be re-examined with much greater accuracy, unlocking new leads that would otherwise remain hidden. This approach was used famously to identify the Golden State Killer in 2018, when investigators used public genealogy databases to match crime scene DNA to relatives of the perpetrator, eventually leading them to Joseph James D'Angelo. In Sarah Chen's case, while they had a direct DNA match to Pastor Miller, genetic genealogy helped confirm the connection by linking the DNA to Miller's living relatives, eliminating any remaining doubt about the source of the biological evidence. With the DNA confirmation in hand, Rivera digs deeper into Miller's history. He discovers that during the 1970s, First Community Church received several informal complaints from female parishioners about Pastor Miller's overly personal attention during counseling sessions. All were handled internally by church elders, never reported to police. Rivera also notices something else. 2 other disappearances of young women from church communities in the Kern County area during the 1970s. Linda Patterson, 1972, and Carol Watson, 1977. Both were active in their churches, both vanished after evening activities, and both cases remain unsolved. In each instance, Pastor Miller had conducted guest sermons or revival meetings in the months preceding their disappearances. A pattern emerges. 3 young women, all involved in church activities, all disappearing after evening events. Their cars found abandoned near bodies of water. No signs of struggle. No bodies recovered. And connected to all 3, however tangentially, Pastor David Miller. Investigating a deceased suspect presents unique challenges. Without the possibility of arrest or trial, the focus shifts to providing answers rather than securing convictions. For Rivera, this means building the strongest possible case posthumously, one that would stand up to historical scrutiny and provide closure to families. The DNA evidence is compelling, but Rivera wants more. Enough evidence to declare the case solved beyond any reasonable doubt. He requests permission to search properties formerly owned by Miller, looking for any additional connections to Sarah Chen or the other missing women. A week later, Rivera obtains a warrant to search Miller's former home, now owned by new residents who know nothing about the property's history. In the basement, behind a false wall installed by the current owners during renovations, Rivera's team discovers a metal box containing photographs, notes, and a small journal. The journal contains cryptic entries that reference testing faith, purifying the imperfect, and saving souls through sacrifice. One entry dated March 1975 sends chills down Rivera's spine. Tonight I saved a wandering lamb from further sin. She rests now in the arms of the river, purified and perfect. The photographs show various locations along the Kern River, with specific areas marked with small X's. One image shows a young woman who resembles Sarah Chen from a distance, though the photo is too grainy to be certain. The current residents confirmed the false wall was there when they purchased the property. They'd assumed it was structural. With the new evidence, Rivera contacts the state's forensic anthropology team. Using the photographs and journal entries, they identify 3 potential sites along the Kern River where Sarah's remains might be located. The areas have changed significantly over nearly 5 decades. Seasonal flooding, erosion, and development have altered the landscape. The team uses ground-penetrating radar, drone imagery, and soil analysis to identify anomalies in the areas marked in Miller's photographs. At the second location, a secluded bend in the river now part of a protected natural area, the radar detects something buried approximately 3 feet deep. On a cool morning in May 2023, Rivera and the forensic team begin the careful excavation process. The site is remote, accessible only by off-road vehicles. The team works slowly, methodically, knowing they're likely recovering human remains after nearly half a century. At a depth of 2.8 feet, they find what they're looking for: skeletal remains, mostly intact, along with fragments of clothing consistent with what Sarah Chen was wearing when she disappeared. A tarnished silver necklace with a small cross lies near the cervical vertebrae, matching the description Maria Chen provided in 1975 of the necklace her daughter never removed. The remains are carefully removed and transported to the State Forensic Laboratory. DNA analysis confirms what everyone already suspects. The bones belong to Sarah Chen. The forensic anthropologist's report notes evidence of perimortem trauma to the skull, consistent with blunt force injury. Sarah Chen didn't simply disappear, she was murdered. 2 weeks later, Rivera travels to Sacramento to meet with Maria Chen, now in her late 80s, living with her niece. He brings with him the confirmation she's waited nearly 50 years to receive. Her daughter has been found, and her killer identified. Maria listens quietly as Rivera explains the DNA evidence, the journal entries, the recovery of Sarah's remains. She asks few questions, her eyes filled with a mixture of grief and relief. "I always knew she didn't run away," she says softly. "I always knew something terrible had happened." A month later, Sarah Chen is finally laid to rest in a Bakersfield cemetery, her grave marked with a headstone that bears both her date of birth and the date she disappeared. The endpoint, unknown for 48 years, now finally confirmed. The service is small, attended by relatives who never knew her but grew up with her story, and a few aging members of the community who remember the bright young woman who vanished in 1975. With Sarah's case resolved, Rivera turns his attention to the other disappearances potentially connected to Pastor Miller. Linda Patterson's family in Fresno and Carol Watson's family in Visalia are notified of the possible connection. Both cases are reopened, though with Miller deceased and limited physical evidence, definitive answers may prove elusive. The resolution of Sarah Chen's case leads to policy changes in Kern County regarding the review of cold cases. A formal program is established to re-examine all pre-1980 missing persons cases using modern forensic technologies. The success demonstrates that even cases once considered hopeless can be solved with persistence and advancing science. In the months following the resolution of Sarah Chen's case, the Kern County District Attorney's Office formally closed the investigation, declaring David Miller the perpetrator based on the overwhelming evidence. While no trial would ever take place, the standard of proof required for case closure was met. The evidence would have been sufficient to secure a conviction had Miller been alive. For Maria Chen, the resolution brought a painful but necessary closure. In an interview with local media, she expressed both grief and relief. "For 48 years, I didn't know whether my daughter was alive or dead. I didn't know if she was suffering, if she needed help. Now I know she's at peace. The not knowing was the hardest part." The Bakersfield community grappled with the revelation that a respected religious leader had likely been responsible for multiple disappearances. Former congregation members struggled to reconcile their memories of a charismatic pastor with the evidence of a predator. The First Community Church, now under new leadership for decades, issued a statement expressing profound sorrow for any harm that came to individuals under our care in the past. Sarah Chen's case exemplifies the revolutionary advances in forensic science over the past half-century. What was impossible in 1975 became routine by 2023. The development of DNA analysis, genetic genealogy, and enhanced evidence processing techniques has transformed cold case investigations. As detailed in forensic literature, since its discovery in 1985 by Alec Jeffreys, forensic DNA profiling has emerged as an immensely powerful technology. The application of this technology to missing persons cases has been particularly transformative. Forensic genetics now plays crucial roles in missing person cases, including homicides and human rights-related investigations. It's also important in the investigation of living missing persons, including trafficked children and persons displaced due to conflict and migration. In Sarah's case, several cutting-edge techniques made resolution possible. Low copy number DNA analysis allowed technicians to generate profiles from minimal biological material that would have been useless in 1975. Genetic genealogy helped confirm the identity of the DNA source through family connections. Massively parallel sequencing, MPS, enabled analysis of degraded samples that earlier technologies couldn't process. An isotope analysis of the hair sample provided information about Sarah's geographical movements in her final months. The creation of the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System, NamUs, in 2007 provided a crucial tool for connecting cases across jurisdictions. According to statistics, more than 600,000 people go missing annually in the United States, and approximately 4,400 unidentified bodies are recovered each year. NamUs helps bridge the gap between these two groups. This database, funded by the U.S. Department of Justice, allows law enforcement agencies, medical examiners, and the public to compare missing persons cases with unidentified remains. The system has helped resolve thousands of cases that might otherwise have remained cold indefinitely. While Sarah Chen's case predated NamUs, its resolution demonstrates the importance of centralized databases in solving historical disappearances. The resolution of Sarah Chen's case comes amid a national movement to address cold cases using modern technology. Across the United States, dedicated cold case units are re-examining old evidence with new tools. As one cold case resolution expert describes, innovative techniques, including crowdsourcing justice, are bringing together communities of investigators to solve cases faster. Organizations like Project Cold Case maintain databases of unsolved homicides from across the country, all submitted by law enforcement or victims' families. These organizations provide resources, support, and attention to cases that might otherwise be forgotten. Despite these advances, challenges remain. Nationally, more than 20,000 missing person cases and 14,000 unidentified body cases remain open. The disparity in attention and resources given to different cases remains a concern, particularly for marginalized communities. As seen in recent cases like that of Mary Johnson, an Indigenous woman missing since 2020 whose remains were identified in 2025, certain communities continue to face disparities in how missing persons cases are investigated and publicized. Johnson's case, which gained attention through a documentary, highlights the ongoing crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous women that activists argue has been historically overlooked. Resource allocation for cold case investigations varies dramatically by jurisdiction. Wealthier communities often have better funded cold case units, while smaller or poorer jurisdictions struggle to dedicate resources to historical cases. This creates a justice gap where solvability becomes dependent on geography and economic factors rather than evidence quality. The use of genetic genealogy in criminal investigations raises important ethical questions about privacy, consent, and the use of commercial DNA databases for law enforcement purposes. While these techniques have solved countless cold cases, they've also sparked debates about the balance between public safety and individual privacy rights. Cases like Sarah Chen's also raise difficult questions about institutional accountability, particularly when trusted figures are involved. The tendency of some organizations to handle complaints internally rather than involving law enforcement can enable predators and delay justice. Sarah Chen's legacy extends beyond her own case resolution. Her story has prompted changes in how Kern County handles cold cases, including regular review of all unsolved missing persons cases every 5 years, automatic DNA testing of all biological evidence in cold cases where technology may provide new leads, improved documentation and preservation standards for evidence, and better coordination with state and federal databases. For other families with missing loved ones, Sarah's story provides hope that answers may still come, even after decades. Each cold case resolution creates ripples, encouraging other families to come forward, other law enforcement agencies to re-examine old cases, and other jurisdictions to allocate resources to historical investigations. The work of solving historical missing persons cases continues across the country. Organizations like the Doe Network feature Cases of the Month to bring exposure to unsolved disappearances in hopes that tips, potential matches, or other answers can be obtained to bring about resolutions. This work has international dimensions as well, with cases crossing borders and jurisdictions. As one missing persons organization notes, their database includes cases from 50 Florida counties, 46 U.S. states, and 3 international countries, demonstrating the widespread nature of the problem and the need for coordinated responses. Amid the discussions of technology, databases, and procedures, it's crucial to remember the human element of these cases. Each missing person represents a life interrupted, a story cut short, a network of relationships permanently altered. The pain of not knowing lasts for decades, affecting multiple generations. As one cold case resource notes, solving cold cases provides closure for families who have waited years for justice. This closure, while often painful, allows families to begin healing processes that were suspended during years of uncertainty. It allows communities to acknowledge painful truths and implement changes that might prevent future tragedies. The future of cold case investigations promises even more powerful tools. Advances in forensic technology continue at a rapid pace, with new methods emerging regularly. Improved DNA analysis techniques can now work with samples thousands of times smaller than what was required just a decade ago. Artificial intelligence is being applied to pattern recognition in cold cases, identifying connections human analysts might miss. digital reconstruction technologies can age photos of missing persons or recreate crime scenes with unprecedented accuracy. And chemical analysis advancements can extract information from evidence previously considered worthless. The next generation of investigators is being trained in these new technologies while maintaining the fundamental investigative skills that have always been at the heart of solving cases. As one cold case training program emphasizes, mastering cold case analysis involves step-by-step cold case analysis, from initial research to breakthrough discoveries, combining old-fashioned detective work with cutting-edge science. Sarah Chen's story represents both the failures and triumphs of our justice system. For 48 years, her case represented how easily individuals can vanish without answers, how investigations can stall despite good intentions, how evidence can sit unused while families suffer uncertainty. But her story also represents hope, the hope that advancing technology brings, the persistence of dedicated investigators, the courage of families who never give up, and the possibility of resolution, even after half a century. Her case demonstrates that justice delayed doesn't have to mean justice denied. If Sarah Chen's story has moved you, consider learning more about missing persons cases in your own community. Many cold case units welcome tips from the public, and sometimes the smallest detail, a remembered conversation, an old photograph, a childhood memory, can provide the missing piece that solves a decades-old mystery. Sarah Chen's name is no longer just an entry in a missing persons database. She has her story back, the story of a bright young woman with dreams of becoming a teacher whose life was tragically cut short, but whose memory has finally been honored with truth and resolution. In the end, that may be the most important justice of all. Thank you for joining us for this in-depth look at one of America's thousands of missing persons cases. If you found this story compelling, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and click the notification bell so you won't miss our future explorations of history's greatest mysteries. Until next time, remember that every missing person has a story worth telling, and every cold case deserves a second look. If you have information about any missing persons case, regardless of how much time has passed, please contact your local law enforcement agency or the National Missing and Unidentified Person System at www.namus.gov. You might hold the key to providing a family with the answers they've been waiting for.